All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Coming to you live from BlurredCon. Yes, it is. It's been a con-heavy weekend. If you guys have been keeping in touch with social media, a lot has been going on here on the East Coast con-wise. But the show must go on, and we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Secret Invasion. I'm gonna have my guest two co-hosts that I'm happy to have joining us this week, Jonas, in a moment. But in the meantime, give you some quick spark notes, if you will, of what has happened thus far in the show. So last we left off in, I guess you can say, episode two. It left us off on a cliffhanger of us finding out that not only has Nick Fury lost pretty much all the allies that he has at this point, of being fired by none other than Rhodey, but uh, also having a falling out with Talos, and as I said, in for all intensive purposes, losing the allies that he has, and also another wrinkle of finding out that he's married to a Skrull. So, at the end of episode two, they kind of left it a little ambiguous of whether or not he was aware that his significant other was a scroll, but by episode three, it becomes clear that he is aware. And additionally, we have some other components that are happening as well. We still have Gravik that is at play as our disillusioned scroll. We get some illusions of his plans of being able to combat any type of uh, of pushback that he may receive, from the defenses of Earth, including the Avengers, by the illusion of us knowing that there are super scrolls that we may potentially, have that they are working on, giving scrolls the ability to be able to copy the powers of many of the superpowered individuals that have been on Earth. And aside from all of that, we also have a continued conflict, I guess you can say, between Gaia and Gravik as well, in that Gaia has we get the impression that Gaia has been suspected, or I should say Gravik has been suspicious of Gaia being a double agent of sorts, for her father, and through an elaborate type of terrorist plot that he orchestrates, he's able to essentially smoke her out and reveal her to be the spy that he had suspected she was. And it closes we with her in losing her life, and I say it in that tone because unfortunately in prior promotional material we've seen Gaia in other scenes, so perhaps there's more at play that we initially had anticipated. But as I said, we're going to dig into a lot of what is going on with this show. So I want to introduce two of our hosts. First up, they have been on the show before, so it's great to have them back. They are an actor that you've seen in the likes of VHS 2, and they also have the series known as Ithaca, which I highly recommend you guys to check out if you haven't already. But I'm sure that they will have. I'll provide some time for them to be able to talk further about it. I want to welcome back Jay Saunders. Jay, what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on?
All right, all right. So next up, also another friend of the show, been on here before, fellow media personality on the other side of the pond, but he comes to many of the shows that have seen me cover, whether it's with San Diego Comic Con or New York Comic Con, among many others. It's my Pleasure to welcome back Leonard Sultana, aka an Englishman in San Diego. What is going on, sir?
A media personality. I think that's the
There you go.
last thing that's the last label anyone would ever have put on my me. At least you didn't call me an influencer, because otherwise
Hey,
I really
hey,
would have.
hey.
Yeah,
We
I'd have
we gonna
definitely.
go with it. We're gonna go with it because hey, the whole shebang is definitely your moniker. So
It's been a while
something
since
that
I've been
people
wearing
are
these too, because
automatically connect you with.
I've been kind of off the grid for a little bit, so I haven't been
You
wearing
have,
the hats for a
you have,
while. So yeah,
you have for sure. So
but
first and
we're back
foremost,
into San Diego Comic Con mode. So yeah, the hats are back out.
for sure, for sure. But first and foremost, guys, how have you guys been? I know it's been a minute since in either case, whether it's you, Jay, or you, Leonard, that we've had a chance to like touch base. I mean, obviously, we're connecting on social media, but that's different versus actually, being in the same space, quote unquote, technically, virtually. But still, how are you guys doing?
Doing great. Been very, very busy. Been working on another feature film. Um, been working on it for the last year, and we'll most
Oh wow.
likely be filming it next summer. So I'm just treating this entire year as pre-production, and it's something that I'm over the top excited about. It's taken a lot out of me, and I can't wait to finally get the cameras to start rolling.
Cool beans. Leonard?
Exciting stuff. Not so exciting on my end. I've had some family issues in terms of the health of one or two of my family members, which has been basically my focus,
Of course.
certainly for the last 8-9 months or so. I have been able to dip my toe into one or two conventions, such as Lawless here in the UK, which very much focuses on the 2000 AD British
Yeah.
creators kind of side. So I've still kind of kept my foot in the water, but when it comes to enjoying pop culture, it's been very much a case of what I can see on the small screen. I haven't been able to see any of the recent MCU films or any of like the Flash or any. I haven't seen any of them on the big screen because I haven't been able to get out of the house. So no, Secret Invasion has been certainly something which I've been looking forward to because it's something that I'm able to see and enjoy at home.
For sure, for sure. So with that being said, I wanted to kind of get into, I guess you could say, some thematic components of the episode that were at play. And before I get into those themes, what were your initial impressions with this episode? Whoever
Yeah.
like to start.
Well, I'm coming into it with very, very fresh eyes. I didn't know anything about the show. I'm very, very late to the game when it comes to a lot of the newer Marvel movies. I hadn't seen Captain Marvel. I didn't know any of the politics that were going on before the show had started. So um, I was I binged watched all of them and was really, really blown away at how engaging it was for me. Just some really incredible acting from Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn. The dynamic of them together, anytime they're on screen, I mean, they could read a cookie recipe, and
Yeah,
I'd
yeah.
be at the edge of my seat. It's I really, really enjoyed how they started the show by really setting up. Hey, this is in a world where there's a lot of information being thrown at you. What information can you trust? Well, when you can't trust that information, you really have to rely on the people that you love, the people that you know. But then, what happens when those people that you know aren't who they are, who they appear to be?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's that theme has stayed very, very strong throughout all three episodes. They did a real fantastic job of just keeping it to that controlling idea. And now with these episodes where we've got Samuel Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn back together with Fury and Talos, the idea of the people that you are drawn closest to, what happens when there's a lot of debt that you have to pay to both each other when you're playing that tit for tat game. Uh,
Absolutely.
they have such a long history together. They play that both fantastically. I mean, and it's in the script with the exposition with this 30-year background. But I mean, that's a lot of time. That's a lot, that's a lot of time for a relationship. So the idea of the debts that they owe each other, and how they've gotten to this point of, bitter resentment back and forth with, okay, I owe you this, you owe me this, I've been afforded, you at least owe this to me. It's fun. I'm excited to see where that goes after just 3 episodes.
For sure. And you, Leonard?
I totally agree. I mean, certainly for myself, I mean, I was aware of the background and the backstory, so definitely came into it invested in that regard. To learn about what the politics and the feelings of the Skrulls of being abandoned by Nick Fury, and feeling that he had broken his promise. So yeah, that whole idea of what had been owed to them, and indeed just owed in terms of relationships. I think that was a very an excellent point there that you made. But for myself, certainly when it comes throughout the themes of the show, it is about trust. I mean, we know that about the whole concept and I mean, it's. I mean, the concerns I always have when it comes to the Marvel shows is what I call Picard season 1 problems, which is basically where they make a script up and they almost leave a whole bunch of placeholders for some interesting dialogue. And there are some issues when it comes to the MCU where the dialogue and the storytelling isn't as switched on and engaged. And I think the last time there was a show that really did kind of like focus on that really tight storytelling was, I'd say, WandaVision. This is kind of a return to form. It's not entirely there, but it's close. But acting certainly is off the board. I mean, everyone rocking up. This isn't a Samuel L. Jackson show, and that's what I've found as my big surprise, and I've really enjoyed that. This is Ben Mendelsohn's show for me. Ben Mendelsohn is shining in this particular show. It's about his conflict with his own people, and that sense of abandonment, and what do you do when a dog has been left hungry and it's suddenly cornered, and what happens? Does it fight back? Does it bite? And that's exactly what we're seeing. And the speed at which I think the speed of the response from the Skrulls, or the sudden, the characters and the immediacy of their response and their attack on the humans of Earth. It's more a case of, it's like we see with Fury as well. It's about revenge, and that's a very passionate and a very visceral emotion. And that's what we're seeing. We're not just seeing this. I mean, the whole idea of revenge is a dish best served cold. No, I want my revenge now. That's what we're kind of getting, and we're getting a very. It's visceral, and I think that's something that has been missing from the MCU, certainly since from Endgame. That sense of that immediate kind of emotion. And I think that's what I've really enjoyed about Telos's responses. Certainly when Emilia Clarke's character, when his daughter is talked about, when Guy has talked about, it's a visceral response, and that I'm really getting into. That kind of, it's the blood is up, and that's what I've really been responding to.
For sure. And I guess one thing that has been fascinating, I guess thematically, is a lot of what we've seen in the MCU thus far, especially when it's come to some of our franchises, is a recent one that I've noticed trend-wise has been parents and their kids, whether it's fathers and their sons, or however familial relationship that you're thinking about. And you have a component of it at play here with Talos and his daughter Gaia, but there are other things that I feel are far deeper that I feel isn't being discussed a lot, and it's still feel very, as you said, visceral, is there's a lot of like dichotomy or connection to I want to say racism. You have components of that. Very not explicitly, but I mean there are components in there where it touches on things where we have the scrolls and we have the humans, and if I'm picturing that scene in which you have between Talos and Fury, of them talking about just that idea of whether or not we have whether or not human beings would be not human beings, excuse me, scrolls would be accepted into Earth with open arms, and how they will react. And just that line, I don't believe it may have not been this past episode, but I want to say maybe it was the episode prior, where Fury made that comment of, you think that we have enough enough space here on Earth just to deal with what we already have going on among human beings, that we're going to introduce a whole other species? And I'm like, wow, that was like it made at initial impressions, it doesn't seem like a really like hard thing to say to someone that call you or consider your friend, but like the way that interaction kind of concluded, I was like, wow, that was like really messed up what you said to Talos of how you guys interacted, and understanding where he's coming from, of why he made the choices that he made. And in addition to that too, another thing that they kind of tackle in this episode is just that idea of war times, where a lot of times in times of war, where you have your bureaucracy, and then you have your foot soldiers, and how there's kind of a disconnect there, where you have all these ideologies that you have with those that are in power, using quote unquote their soldiers as pawns to carry out whatever that ideology is. And how things can really become blurred in those times, and how you also have instances in which I'm bringing in that idea of racism, where we've seen it in the past, where you have folks that go to war, and even though they may not even though there may be a distrust of us of a given faction of people, they still have no problem utilizing them as pawns to carry out whatever that ideology is. So that was something that was like really fascinating to see tackled, because and also thinking about another conversation, we have all these scenes between two characters in many of these episodes, where we kind of have these discussions between two characters, whether I'm thinking of Talos and Fury, whether I'm thinking of Fury and his wife, of Fury and
Fury
Rhodey
and
too.
Rhodey. I thought that was a
It
hell of
was.
a scene. And certainly what was thrown up by Fury, and then what was thrown back in his face by
Exactly.
Rhodey. I thought that was for me, that was actually one of the standout scenes of the whole episode.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I was actually going to mention the same exact thing. I mean, the two episodes that really stand out, or the two scenes that have really stood out to me the most out of all three episodes, were that scene between Fury and Rhodey. Because yes, you mentioned that there's a little bit of a touching on the race thing, but the fact that Rhodey was able to just drop, really just
shut
it down.
But you're right, exactly right there, and just say, look, we're not. This
like
is not,
we're not going to use that card.
Yeah, exactly. We're not playing this brother role here. That really stood out, and that train sequence between Talos and Fury. I think the line was, "There's not enough room. There's not enough room or tolerance on this planet for another species." Those were just fantastic lines. And once again, it's just I'm looking at this from the standpoint of a filmmaker and as an actor. Those are some very, very challenging scenes to do, to deliver with the amount of nuance that they did. So to be able to deliver those arguments in such a clear way, you know, with these scenes that are very, very static, it's something that as an actor I would love to bite my teeth into. And you know, they just deliver on that flawlessly. For me, one of the big themes that really stands out was from that train sequence, and really stems from the story that Nick Fury tells about him riding with his mother, um, and how she asks him a question and tell me something I don't know about this, and he ends up telling a lie to his mother. But the concept that the telling lies reveals more about the truth than the truth actually does, and explicitly saying what the truth is. And you're seeing that throughout the entire show, which is really, really fun. And with a show that has a sort of espionage feel to it, and one of the things that I'm worried about, you know, as the show continues, you know, in a traditional 90-minute movie, yeah, you can have a lot of the backstabbing and people switching sides and not quite knowing where people's trust, if you can trust another character, up until you hit those climaxes or those midpoints. With a show like this, I'm not entirely sure how many episodes they're planning on going. I don't know if it's just going to be just a one season with 10 episodes, all 60 minutes. With characters that shapeshift, I'm wondering how many times they're going to be playing that card. How many times
Yes, and
going to be, you know, switching into someone else to the point where the audience sort of feels more and more disengaged. Well, okay, I'm just not trusting any of these people to say who they are or what they're doing. I don't know how much backstabbing there's going to be before the gravity and the weight of the consequences of their actions starts to, you know, start to fade. At the moment, you know, they're juggling a lot of really challenging power dynamics, and, you know, as you were talking about, the social hierarchies of things, you know, the generals, the people in power versus the foot soldiers. They're juggling quite a bit, and as close as I was looking at it, they're really moving at a remarkable pace. So, you know, I wonder how long they're going to be able to keep that up. The one thing that stood out to me, which was always kind of my issue when it came to Marvel movies, is the sort of the gravity and the weight of deaths, of the deaths of people who aren't superheroes.
yes,
You know, have an explosion of involving 2,000 some people. I mean, it's pretty significant. And as they were saying, you know, this could easily lead into a World War III scenario. Everyone's very much on edge. You know, that being sort of, I don't want to quite say minimized, but sort of blurred when it came to Maria Hill's death. You know, it's, you know, how many times can you play the world is at stake when it doesn't feel like we're so fully engaged with the people who are going to end up being, you know, the victims, the people that they are trying to save. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I do want to get into that, because we're going to dig into that, like, with theories and things. But one thing that I do want to spend some time with, you know, especially with this show, is getting into like some callbacks or Easter eggs. So I'm going to punt it over to you, Leonard. You know, perhaps, you know, there were some, you know, Easter eggs that you did enjoy that they have shared, and then, you know, we'll make our trip back to that, because I definitely have issue with that as well. It's funny you brought that up, but go ahead, Leonard.
I mean, very quickly then, just to cover a couple of things you covered there. Number one, it was very difficult for me to actually kind of really get my head around that whole attack in Russia, because that scene was shot in the Peace Hall in Halifax, which is 20 minutes from my house. So it kind of took it out of my head a little bit. I love that. The whole business with Maria Hill, I kind of saw that coming, because I think it was the first episode. You've got to make the impact, and and you have a major character death. and I think, like you say, there's only so many times they can play that card, and then it's just a case of, okay, look at the residual characters. Let's see who we can basically lose at this point, which is where I'm really scared for Olivia Colman, because the second we lose her, I'm going to be very I'm going to disassociate at that point, because I love Olivia Colman to death. The whole business of the shape shifting as well, really quickly, and so like playing that card of having just a character just shape shift, just to kind of emphasize that character. That whole scene between Talos and Gravax, where they're in the restaurant, and Talos launches across the table at him, and all of a sudden the entire restaurant turns into Gravax. So at which point I just thought to myself, why did they all turn into him? Why didn't they all turn into Skrulls? Or why hit a great shot for the trailer, but it seemed to me a little bit of a overplaying, like you say, of a card. When it comes to the Easter eggs, like you say, I think obviously the big one, and the second in season 2, when I heard of a machine that will enhance Skrulls, I went, okay, Super Skrulls, excellent. I mean, yeah, that little comic book fan, so like the little twitch in the back of my head just went, yeah, that just went, okay, Super Skrulls, yeah, I'm down with that. The playing of using different abilities of different characters. So we've listed Groot in there. We've listed a number of characters that we've seen in other
Cold
MCU
City and
properties.
Extremist.
And I'm just, at which point you just go, okay, what are you going to do with that? I mean, I'm up for learning how they're going to infiltrate and sort of integrate those abilities into Skrulls, and how Super Skrulls will then appear. I've been really enjoying actually just kind of taking a step back from that. I mean, that little sort of pleasure center of hearing about Super Skrulls, or learning, thinking that Super Skrulls are on their way. I kind of actually wanted to turn that off. I just wanted to hang back and have this existing in its own space. I'm not saying that I'm bored of Easter eggs now, but I'm bored of having to look for them. I want a program to exist in its own space instead of having to play a puzzle box.
Absolutely.
I mean, yes, we've had that time where, oh, did you see this in the corner of the 4K Ultra HD presentation in the top right hand corner, which exists in a 2-inch square? Oh, wow, that's and you just go, fine, that's great if you want to tickle a social media box for a while, but I'm bored of that now. I actually just want to enjoy a story with characters which will play out for me in real time. It's the reason why I love episodic television, because I love cliffhangers. I love like this, an ability to kind of digest and embrace the story and then pick it up. And it's the reason why I enjoy episodic comics. I would not have binged this, and I'm just bored of having to play a game to kind of enjoy a show now.
No, I hear you, and I mean that's one thing that I feel that has worked for a lot of franchises recently. Black Panther being one, is that everything is so much self-contained in Wakanda. I mean, yeah, we have things that affect the MCU at large, but it still is contained within that versus having.
I think it's one of the reasons why I didn't like Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for the reasons that many people did come up with, which were all valid, by the way. But I think it was the whole puzzle box nature of that particular film. And I would prefer now someone to actually just tell me a story which I don't have to jump through too many hoops. Okay, that doesn't sound right, because I do like to work for a show. But certainly have to then read a lot of extraneous, that's not even a word, material to kind of enjoy and embrace.
For sure. And actually opens up a whole other can of worms, but we don't have time for it to go on this show, which is like what we're seeing with blockbusters, and how, like, a lot of blockbusters right now aren't doing too too well, and I want to say a lot of it is more the focus on spectacle versus what you're talking about, which is story. So, but we will save that for another show. Love to have you want to talk about that. Be that as it may, of talking further about what you were mentioning, Jay, of and I guess this is a good way to hop into segue with like theories and that section. But that's one thing that I hope that, like you said, isn't something that becomes like a staple or something that continues as a trend, because by having this whole component of or the possibility of scrolls, if it gets overdone, it will negate or mess up years and years of character development with a lot of your characters. And a lot of people are going to feel cheated that have been watching, these characters develop over all these years. So hopefully, with characters that are revealed to be scrolls, because I have my suspicions of who it might be, that we find out that it's happened relatively recently and that it hasn't been going on for years and years and years, where the character has to bake up.
We've done Hydra already.
Yeah,
we've done it.
Yeah. It's called It's called Winter Soda, and we've done it. So like it's no reason to kind of revisit that, because going into theories, and this is spoiler. Well, I guess it's not really spoilers because it hasn't been confirmed yet, but it will likely be a spoiler if it ends up being confirmed, which I feel it might. Is and maybe you don't want to hear this, Jay. So I don't know if you want to like shut your ears, but I'm very suspicious of Rhodey, like of him potentially being a Skrull, and the reason being is that while, don't get me wrong, while the scene was well acted, I don't picture that Rhodey would treat Fury that way. Like even if they are in disagreement like that, I still feel he wouldn't do Fury that way. They've been through too much in terms of like everything that's happened thus far. Even in his new
I think he would.
Even in his new position.
I totally think he would.
I'm saying, so hear me out. I'm guessing if he ends up being a Skrull, that we find out that he got switched out some point between maybe Civil War, so like maybe during Infinity War or Endgame, he was in fact a Skrull. Because I mean, Rhodey doesn't need to have any powers. All he needs to do is know how to use the suit, and we've already seen that the Skrulls themselves can take on the memories or the capabilities of whoever it is that they're copying. So that's easy. It's not like they're copying a power. They're just copying his knowledge and ability to be able to utilize the suit. So that's something that can be copied. So that would be interesting, because that way it's still enough time when you're like, damn, he was a Skrull that whole time. But it's not too far into us having that character where we feel like we're cheated out of years and years of development. So like it could have been like right in that moment in Civil War where he got grounded by in during the fight, and in the hospital they switched him out, and he got switched out while he was in the hospital. My guess. And I think it may actually, outside of him, which I've shared in other episodes, is that the reason why they introduced it early of what we have going on with the Skrulls who are in positions of power in terms of politics is that we may have someone as our leader who may also be a Skrull too. That
one I'll bite on. That one that I agree with.
And the only reason being is, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I mean, I absolutely agree. I mean, it's the way that the show has sort of, presented itself is absolutely, when it comes to, they've already mentioned that they've got shapeshifters who have infiltrated these places of power. It's not just those 5 that are sitting at this table. It's definitely much grander than that. And as the show is continuing, they're just even Fury figuring out that there's millions more. What started out as just a few hundred have just grown exponentially. And but it's also one of those things where, like I said, I think that is what the show. I'm worried about the show hinging on. It's like, hey, here's this person of power who's come into the show, is going to change things up, is going to change things for our characters, and then boop, we find out that they're a shapeshifter. Like I said, it's one of those things where I don't know how often they're going to be able to play that. So far, what I've just been taking, it's not really a theory or a what if. It's just that I really do enjoy how intimate they're making some of these interactions just between two characters, just sitting in a car together, having a conversation in a train, sitting at a table, and just having those those verbal sparring. I mean, it reminds me of the scene from the classic dinner sequence from Jurassic Park, where they're all just sitting around that table and just having those conversations about this is of what their point of view of the world is. I love when characters hash that out, because
even from that,
what was that?
From that film, I'd even turn around and say the scene between Hammond and Ellie, post the attacks, and they're just sat there, they're eating ice cream, and they're seeing that sparring, not that sparring, just that kind of like that talking of their own takes on the whole situation. And that's why I'm enjoying that character development as well, very much so in this series.
It brings everything down to a very intimate,
a human level.
Especially with a show that we know the MCU is full of these really, really grand characters with these with superpowers. It's amazing. I like the idea that we're bringing an intimacy to the people behind the superpowers, and dealing with a different kind of power at the same time too, and trying to figure out the nuances of that. I really like that being hashed out, and I just have no idea what that's going to mean for the characters in power that you think that are going to be revealed as things go on. I'm just hoping the show isn't about, hey, here's the big twist at the end, this person was a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about something with 10 episodes of that, I mean, that that's just a 90-minute movie just stretched out. It's just a plot point from a 90-minute movie that's just stretched out.
Which we had already with Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've had that.
Yeah, and as someone who hasn't been watching all of the different MCU shows, it's something that I can already see from a mile away. So it's the thing that I think is really, really strong about this show is the very, very intimate beats. When you find out that Bob's, the code that he has is his son's name, Zachary. I mean, I love that. But then the show immediately moved on from there with throwing Bob's body into a car, and you don't even find out what happens to Zachary, unless I completely missed that. I don't know if they mentioned that.
No, I was wondering too. I was like, did they kill him too?
And actually, for me, we talk about Ben Mendelsohn being so fantastic. Something that I think that Samuel L. Jackson has done was, I think he's really playing the weight of some of these deaths extremely well, and the weight of things kind of spinning out of his control very well. There's some very, very small moments that they've had where you just see his physicality just break down when he's just sitting on a bench in the park, and just shaking his head, after Marie Hill has died, after, there's a lot of things being thrown at him. So I really feel like the strength of the show is in the nuance of the intimacy of the relationships, and they're discussing.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was actually going to point that out, because certainly in this episode and a little bit in the second episode as well, there was a number of flashbacks where the guys in the CGI department have done a cracking job of de-aging Samuel L. Jackson again.
Yeah.
Certainly scenes from 1994, and that the physicality. Samuel L. Jackson in those the flashback scenes, he's upright, he's strong, he knows his purpose, he knows what he's wanting from his people, he knows what he's wanting from himself. Everything that we've seen currently, he's slouching in his seat. Even in the scene with Rhodey, he's sat back. He's almost the blip and the subsequent events of that have broken him, and it's fascinating to see how that has been done, not only by Samuel L. Jackson but also his directors in these episodes. That is a conscious choice of this guy. I mean, it's the reason why I would say that I don't think Rhodey's a Skrull. I think that scene was a red herring. Just the whole business of him firing Fury, that seemed like a red herring to me. That Rhodey has always followed people of honor and honesty. So he's followed Tony to the ends of the earth, to having a broken body. He's followed his president. He's always been a man of his uniform and a man of honor, which is why when he's face to face with a master liar, he will snap back at that person.
Right.
So
right.
no, I think that whole scene was a bit of a misstep, or a red herring. But no, the physicality of what Samuel L. Jackson, you see that kind of, and I'm wondering if there's a little bit more for myself. When we're talking spoilers, we're talking theories and whatever. There's been some coughs, there's been some splutters. I'm wondering if there's more to Nick Fury as a physical character. I'm wondering if he's on his own particular end game. I'm wondering if there's more to that. For me, there's more to that.
And what the show so far is got these, what I'm so used to with MCU is, very chiseled superheroes, people who are in their prime, actors in their prime. So the fact that you've got the show, the four standouts to me are the I can't remember the actress's name, but the woman who plays Sonya, Ben Mendelsohn, the actress who plays Sonya. I remember her all the way from Hot Fuzz.
That would be Olivia Colman. That's who I was on about. Yeah.
Right. And very, very cerebral with how she played that torture sequence, but very, very cheeky at the same time. Ben Mendelsohn, Nick Fury, and Rhodey. These are all very, very strong characters who have a strong sense of verbal sparring. So
what do we think? What do we think about Big Bad then?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fantastic, but for me, it's like those four characters. When it comes to that sparring, I'm not quite sure what that relationship between Fury and Sonya is going to lead to. She's somewhat of an enigma to me, and I really, really enjoy that. And you're not looking at a character who is in their prime physically. You're using someone who has so much experience under their belt doing what she does, and I'm very intrigued about what she's going to end up doing down the line. When it comes to Gravik, I'm already seeing a guy who is very, very competent physically, competent when he's fighting. He's already talking about himself as being this foot soldier. Sonya is just such an enigma to me, and I have no idea where the hell that character is going to go. And that's what I'm hoping. That's what I really believe the strength of this show is right now. Those four characters who have a really, really strong sense of how do we play these dynamics just with our words, and how we talk about our power as opposed to having to demonstrate it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing that I will touch on before I continue on with Secret Invasion, that I was going to say, in addition to what we have trope-wise that we've introduced now with having Skrulls being a part of the MCU, is now what we also have introduced by Loki with variants. That's another component that I feel can be dangerously overused, is, oh, well, we can write it off because they're just a variant. Oh, yeah, they're just a, an alternate, version of this same character. while it's cool to have that component introduced to the MCU, that along with what we have with the scrolls are two elements that, if left unchecked, can put the MCU in a weird place where it's hard to really enjoy any character development, and because you don't know if they're alternate version of that character, which you don't want to have to keep track of, and then on the other end too of, oh, they were never that character to begin with. Um, and the reason why I also say that, going to what you were saying, Leonard, about Rhodey, the only reason why I bring up that idea, in any other circumstance, I would agree with you. But I only bring that up is because it provides them an interesting place to do armor wars with, because you can say, similar to what they did with Guardians with Gamora, that it's him basically picking up the pieces of whatever's transpired with someone who had been impersonating him during that time. Where, yeah, he's cleaning up the mess with from what I understand, it's going to touch on cleaning up any tech that is being misused at large by the world with Tony's tech, but it's also cleaning up his own mess of whatever happened once he got changed or switched out by a scroll. Because I know a lot of times when it comes to those story arcs, that has seemed to be something that has been used in the past, and I feel like they may use that again to kind of have that extra element for that. I guess you could say now film. I know before it was supposed to be a series, but now at this point, from what I understand, it's going to be a full blown film. Um, so we'll see. It could be wrong, could be correct, but the only other reason why, I don't know how you guys feel. I think you guys were in agreement about the president. Why I bring that up is, and Leonard, you probably know this as well as I, of what's going on with Captain America. So, like, considering how those pieces are falling into place, it would make sense that would be a segue into that movie, of using that to segue into what we know about the new Captain America movie, with Ross and everybody else. So, um, but with that in mind, do you guys have any thoughts, going forward, as we, slowly, pretty much wrap up here, of things that may be ahead? I know, Jay, you were saying you're interested to see, what may transpire with, Fury's wife. Maybe there's some other things, breadcrumbs that have been left thus far that you're interested or have an idea of what they may do with it for either of you.
Oh man, like I said, I didn't know anything about this show coming into it. I haven't been following the MCU as closely, so I I like coming to this with an absolute
Clear slate.
clean slate. I mean that keeps it entertaining for me. I'm not sure. I don't know what the heck is going to happen with Gaia. I don't know where that where that's going to go. I was actually going to ask you, Leonard. I mean, what, considering the cliffhanger that we were left on, what are we looking at with Gaia?
Yeah, I
She
say
ain't dead.
Super Scroll, but go ahead.
She ain't dead. And there's somebody that's been missing, and that's our new recruit. I think someone's being pushed forward. I think there's been a. Let's put it this way. Guy has been trained by the best. She knows how to play the game, and she knows what was coming. She knew the risk going in, and now she's keeping her options open and her protection. I think she's more than willing to throw somebody else under the bus to get out. No, there's more going on there.
Do you think it's Beto?
I don't know about Beto. I just feel there's more. I mean, we're talking about obviously a secret invasion. There's more than meets the eye, but I think I would personally like to see a lot more of the cast, the cast list expanded. I mean, it's great that we've got. I know I've forgotten the actor's name, and he's awesome as well. A Scottish actor. He was seen in a photograph, so we're going to be seeing the cast list expanded over the course of the next series of episodes. I mean, I'd like to see Everett Ross come back. Oh no, that's yeah. I'd like to see some of the more cast members expanded. And personally, when they're talking about, we've got plans for the Avengers if and when they show up, I think we are going to be seeing some major cameos coming up at certainly the back end. If anything, because, well, Samuel L. Jackson is an executive producer on this, and frankly, if he calls you, you're going to rock up. So I think we are going to see some major cameos at the back end, especially, like you say, we've seen on screen some characters and some traits that we will see in the Super Skrull. So I think we may see characters that have had interactions with those. So at least then we have that kind of like to and fro about what those abilities are. Yeah. Personally, I'm just
Tony Leonard. I was going to say Tony Curran.
Oh.
Tony Curran. I think
Sorry?
Tony Curran.
Tony Curran. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Tony Curran. I've interviewed the guy. What the hell? Anyway, yes. Okay, yeah, I deserve a full blown slap for that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the cast list. I mean, grow. I mean, we've got a phenomenal cast list so far, but if we keep offing them, then frankly, we need to keep renewing the pool of cast with some good actors, and yeah, more of that, please.
Indeed, and I will second you on that, because a lot of times when we have characters that are really fascinating, that they immediately get killed off, especially in Marvel's or MCU is notorious with their villains, that they have really good villains. A lot of times they get rid of them, and I'm like, why did you do that? They're awesome. But they've been doing a better job of that lately, of not killing them off immediately. I hope that's the case with Gravik, because I feel like there's a lot more to do with that character if they just have him, in prison somewhere, and learning.
I am hoping that they don't just make it that the character that is defined so far, which is he's been abandoned effectively, and it's all about repaying Fury with that betrayal. I would like that character to develop beyond that 2-beat character note and have more of the either being healed spiritually and emotionally as a Skrull, or just I'd like the character to develop more than just a 2-beat page, and we've had that with too many MCU villains where we've had the 2-beat and then just get rid. I'd like more of that character. I mean, it can be done.
So
we've seen it done.
Has that been the trend for, when you're talking about like the 2-beat villains? Has that been the trend for the series that the MCU have been doing?
The superhero movies,
or just the movie?
I would say more so with the movies. With the series, if I'm thinking back on them, like now that I consider them a part of even though they are series, just as since the MCU considers it canon within their universe, I still put them into that pool. But yeah, with the series, they've done a better job with it, because many of those characters are continuing on in other stuff. In WandaVision, I know that they are, even though it's constantly been delayed, they are doing a
Agatha Harkness Covenant of Chaos.
series.
Yeah.
They also have the characters from Falcon and Winter Soldier coming back. So like, what is it? U.S. Agent. He'll be in Thunderbolts. Upcoming Thunderbolts movie.
So they've been doing a pretty good job at keeping things pretty new.
Yeah. They've been doing a better job of it lately, but I just remember like that first half of the MCU, and even further than that, like they would have a really good character, a really good villain, and they would like just off them immediately. And I'm like, you have this actor playing that role. You can have them in other films later down the line. Like, why would you get rid of that talent from your pool of like movies? But hey, it is what it is. Thankfully, it looks like they seem to, learn from that trend that they have had. And then on top of that too, which is a whole other conversation, where a lot of the villains were basically doppelgangers of the heroes a lot of times, and they didn't really add any other new component or facet to that character or the universe that character inhabits. But that's a whole other topic.
Well, I think that was the concern when they actually announced Secret Invasion, because the comic itself, while a classic run in the comics, it is very much that you're right. It's that one note kind of vibe to the series. In it, the challenge for the story makers in the comics was how to break that one note tempo, and I think that's what the challenge has been for this series. And so far, we're seeing some good tease of that potential for this series going forward, and I'm hoping they pay that off.
Definitely. But with that being said, it's a great way to cap it off. I appreciate both of you guys hopping on to talk about episode 3 of Secret Invasion. But before I let you guys go, can you tell folks where they can find you? Leonard, I'm gonna pass it off to you. I know you need to head off. Go ahead.
Well, at the moment, like I say, I've been a little bit more off the grid, but I am hoping for a little bit of a relaunch of An Englishman in San Diego, and certainly my efforts online in a couple months' time. So do pay attention to my socials. I'm trying to wean myself off Twitter. Thank you, Threads. Thank you so much for coming along just when you have. So Threads and Hive is where I'm currently dipping my toes at the moment. But you can certainly follow along with what my website, this website I own, and Dan Berry has been doing a cracking job of keeping that going. So we are going to be doing our San Diego Comic-Con coverage at theconventioncollective.com. But if you want to follow along with what I'm up to, and certainly any updates to what I'm going to be doing going forward, Englishman SDCC on both Hive and also Threads as well.
All right, cool beans. Jay.
Yeah, if you want to check out our adventure horror miniseries that we are doing with Eduardo Sanchez, you can go to my YouTube channel,
He was just on just a moment ago, guys. So yes, he was on because he directed the latest episode of Strange New Worlds. He was on just an hour ago. Go ahead.
That's awesome. Go to our YouTube channel, Man in the Arena Films, and check out Ithaca, the miniseries. Also, if you check out my Instagram, Jay Saunders 333. I'm currently doing some location scouting for our new film, Peterson Site 2, and you'll be able to get all the updates for that there.
All right. Well, there you guys have it. Again, I want to thank Jay and Leonard for hopping on. Once again, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT, which you see down below. Also at Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. But with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there. And as always, see you soon. Bye.
Take care.